This session we are going to see what is this OAuth 2.0 access token enforcement using Mule OAuth Provider policy. So if I give a short walkthrough that what is this policy. So this policy is used for authorizing client application. So it means basically let's say if you have make a request and that API need some access token kind of thing, then we have this option as well. So we have the OpenID Connect, we have the other third-party provider also. So we can go through those also, but we have the Mule provider itself. So in this session, we are going to see how it works. So if I give a short walkthrough about this, so it is a policy which works exclusively with the Mule auth provider, restrict access to a protected resource to only those HTTP requests. Okay. So this is how the policy work. The first thing is user will make a request. It will go to the policy section. That policy we will implement on our API. Then it will go for the token validation endpoint. Once the validation is done, it will go to the Mule control panel. And once it receive a success response from there also, then our API will get treated. So the diagram is demonstrated in this step. The first, the user send a HTTP request to API protected by the policy. Then policy will extract the token that we sent in a request and send it to the validation endpoint. Once the validation return a metadata that will include the client ID as well. I will show you where is the client ID in that application. And then it will go to the local database updated with the contract previously opened from the endpoint to verify the client ID. The client ID that will be returned from the validation endpoint, that client ID will be sent to this, and this once verified, then it will come to the policy, and once policy verified, then you will be able to hit the API. Okay. So this complete process will be done in 3 steps. So our first step is create a Mule or token provider application. So what we will do, we will create a application, Mule application, where we will design how the token will get generated, what are the things that we need to configure here. Then we will create a flow to implement that policy. So we will create one test flow and we will deploy that application over the cloud. We will deploy the Mule also over the cloud to use it. And once we are done with the step 2, we will go to the step 3 and we'll configure the policy for our second step. So in the first step, we need to configure on these things. We'll look the Mule provider configuration. What are the things that we need to enter here? We also need to have the object store to store the client ID and the validation and the token that we'll use to validate. And then these two connectors that are required to have in our Mule token provider. So first one is the create client and the second one is the validate token. Okay. So let's move to the first step. So I have already done this part. So I will give the walkthrough. So first thing is here we have this client, create client. So how will you use this connector in your Mule application? So you need to go to this exchange, and here you need to write Mule auth. Once you write this, you will get an option Mule auth provider module Mule 4. So you need to click on this and click on this add. So once you add this, you just need to finish. So I have already here create client, delete client, revoke token, and validate token. So I have used this create client component. So our first step is create a client for which we will need the token. So in the create client configuration, the first thing we need to do, go to the module configuration, and let me show you what are the things I have configured here. So in the create client, it requires the listener configuration. So we have the listener configuration. This listener configuration will be used to invoke your application. If I show you this one, I have this host and port here only. Once it is done, then this is the client validation rate limiter. So I have set near about 6 minutes for this. Then I'm storing the client information in this object store client that I have created, and I have given the grant type client credentials. In the path, this is the path that will be used to get the token. So this is / token, and the token will be stored in this object store token part. So whenever the token gets generated, it will get stored in this token store part. And I have set the token time for 30 seconds. So for 30 seconds, the token will be valid. Once the time period exceeded, it will be invalid. And these are the things that I have configured. Okay. So let me close this one. So for this, you need to have two object store. The first object store is client and the second one is token. So I have already given you a demo like why we are using these tokens. So the client one will store the client information and the token one will store the token for that client. Then you need to have the object store configuration as well, because if you're using the object store, it means that you need to have the configuration for that one. So here this is the object store configuration. If you click on this, here we have nothing, just a connection type. Okay. So once it is done and Mule auth provider is done, we'll go to the client create client section. Here these are the things that you need to give. So in the general section we have this client ID that will be picked from our request. Then here I have specified the type, it will be confidential. We have a drop down here, so confidential, either public or confidential. So I have given confidential. And client secret, client name, and here I have given the authorized grant type. So I have mentioned client credential because in the Mule uh, auth provider configuration, I have set it client credentials. So once it is done, so this is the endpoint that I have created here. Create client. You can give any name. It is up to you. So we successfully created the client. Our second step is create an endpoint for the validate token. So this validate token will have a listener and this endpoint will be validate. In the validate token, I will be picking up the access token from the request and then splitting it by the uh, empty space and picking up the second value from the array. Okay. So in authorization, I am passing it. If I show you something in the provider configuration, so here you can see you have more options such like scopes. So what are the scopes you want to give for that particular client? You can mention it over here, and rest of the thing you can leave it blank. Okay. And the validate token, there is nothing much. We just need to get the token that we are sending in the request, and then it will validate. So how the validation will work? Once the token got generated, that token from the object store will be picked and it will matched. And once it matched, it will give that the token is validated. And whatever the information is being stored in the object store, that will be in your response section. So let me run this application. So till the time application runs, let me give you some more information of this Mule OAuth provider. So let's say if you are using this OAuth and you have downloaded it and you are getting error, then you can change this version 1.0.8 to 1.0.5, then it will work fine. Because when you start using it and in the configuration part, let's say this one, in this provider config, if you are not providing this client security provider and resource owner security provider, then uh, it will give you an error that it is required. So since our application got deployed successfully, so the next thing is deploy this application to the Cloud Hub. So what we'll do, we'll right click over here, we'll go to the Anypoint platform and we'll select deploy to Cloud Hub. Once we select the deploy to Cloud Hub, we need to pass some credential of that environment where we want to deploy the application. So here in the properties section, you need to pass the client ID and client secret for the environment where you are passing. So as I have already deployed this application, so I don't need this one. I'll cancel this. I will show you on the uh, runtime manager. So this is the runtime manager. I have deployed the application. Let it get loaded. Okay. So here I have this Mule OAuth token provider, and I have deployed this application earlier. So let me go back. This is the Mule OAuth provider, and I have changed to the token provider name. Now I will hit that API. So the first thing we'll do, create a client. So once we click on the create client, we'll pass here some value. So let's say our client name is testing 12 and the client secret is testing 12. And I will click on send. So it is saying client created. Now we need to generate the token. To generate a token, we'll go here and we'll go on the bulk edit part. So to generate a token, we must specify the grant type for this. So our client name is testing. And let's say if I mismatch, if I give any sample response or any invalid one, then will it work or not? So here I'm missing the G, the letter G, and I will try to hit this. Once I hit this, I will get an error. It is saying invalid credential. The error is invalid client because we haven't created we have created a client with the client ID name this, but the client secret is not matching over here. So once we give it G, now it is the same. So once I click send, now I am able to get the token. So once I get the token, the another step is to validate the token. To validate the token, we need to pass the authorization section. We need to pass the bearer token, and here we'll pass this token. So just copy paste and click on send. So it is saying expire in 2 seconds. We haven't specified the scope, so it is blank, and client ID is this one. So you can also give this token part in your header section, but for that you need to convert it to the uh, base 64. So if you are able to like how you will convert to the base 64, if you want me to show the demo, let me show you the demo for that also. You need to write import star from DW core binaries, and then we need to convert it to the to base 64, and inside that we need to pass that value. So this is the value, and I think this should work. Okay, so let me again hit the API. Again, get the token for this. So if I hit it, I'm having this token. I'll copy this. I'll go over the data weave. I will do this part. Now we have this. I will copy this. I'll copy this. Go to the validate token, BRF, Control V, and send. So if you want to give this particular token in the header section, then you need to convert it to the base 64, and then you will be able to validate the token. So our first step, so the first step was to create a Mule OAuth token provider. So this step got completed. We are now able to create the client, get the get the token, and validate the token as well. Our second step is to create a testing flow where we will test our application. So for that, I have created one another application for the demo purpose. Here, so this is the implementation that I have created. So this is nothing, just a sample message, which is it's working. And let me go to the API designer. I will show you the RAML. So this is the RAML I have here. I have created one endpoint foo, and the sample response is it's working. And to have that policy, I have implemented this security scheme where I have given this label name, then type, and uh, these are the things. In the header section, we are expecting this value, which will be of string type, and these are the. Now in the setting section, I have given the authorization grant type is a client credential, and the rest of the dummy URI. Okay, so I have used this RAML in my Anypoint Studio and developed this flow. Let me run this application to check whether it is working or not. So till the time application getting deployed. So this is our second step. We are here in the second step. We have created a sample flow where we will test. Now we'll proceed to the step 3 once it deployed successfully. And here if I show you, here we have nothing. Here we have this, and here we have this method get, and endpoint name is foo, and it will invoke the this implementation mode. So once it is deployed, what I will do, I will deploy this application to the Cloud Hub in the same way that I have deployed the Mule OAuth token provider, as I have already deployed it. So let me show you the application. So let me go back, and we have the application. Yeah, so this is the token provider, and this is the policy demo, the sample application. So we have this two one. Once I'm done with this, I will go to the API manager. Now this is our step 3. So in the step 3, the first thing you need to have your RAML on which you want to apply that policy. So once you design this ramal, you need to publish this to the exchange. Once you publish to the exchange, pick a manage API from the exchange, click the ramal name. So the name I have given here is auth 2. So we'll select OAuth, and here you will get option auth 2. Then all the things will come manually. You don't need to do anything, and just click on the save. Once you click on the save, your API will be listed here like I have. Now you need to click on this. Once you click on this, you will need to go to the policies, click on apply new policy, and from here you need to select this policy, auth 2 token enforcement using Mule OAuth Provider. So as I have already implemented, so it is not giving me option to add. So let me show you what are the things that are required here. Go to the edit. So here again are the scopes that you want to give. So I have given contain all scope. Now this is the endpoint that is required to validate your token. So in the in this complete policy, we have three endpoint. The first one is create client, second one is token, and the third one is the validate one. So this validate endpoint is required to be used in your policy. So this URL is the same URL that we have, like is the URL that we got when we deploy the application of Mule OAuth token provider. So here, if you see in the anypoint management, anypoint runtime manager token provider. So this is the URL, and after this URL, I have given / validate. Here I have skipped the client ID validation because I don't need that. It will the token will contain the client ID, and I have applied this policy to all method and resource. In the same way, you can apply this to the specific method and resources as well. So for different method and different resource, you can have different credentials to access, and you can restrict the client or the user, like what are the method that you want to expose to a particular client or a user. You can use that policy in that way. Once you apply this policy, you let's say if you have missed or you don't have idea what are the things that are needed to add it here to policy, so that your policy work, you can click on this API snippet part, and you can like whatever the ramal version you have, you can click on that. So we have ramal 1.0, and I just need to copy paste this completely and paste it on in my main ramal file. So once I paste it, I have written here secured by this. So it means when I write here, it means whatever the endpoint and whatever the method we have, that will be secured by this policy. I can restrict it for the selected method or selected endpoint. So once I deploy this application, I will go to the Postman to test this. So here we have this, I have shown you the demo of this token validation point. So we'll now see the get food testing part. So the output should be it's working fine. This message should get printed. I should get printed. Okay. So we have created a client and client name is testing. Then we generated a token for that. So it expires in 30 seconds. So we need to generate it again. Then this is the validate token. So now we don't need to validate this token because this validation part will be handled by your Mule. So if I show you the diagram, we created, now the token validation endpoint will be handled here. Then client ID will be fetched from the validation endpoint and it will go to the Mule control panel. Once control panel verify that client ID is registered or it has in their database, then it will allow our API to access the main API. That is the testing API that we are looking for. So we'll go here. Okay, now let's go to the Postman. So we don't need this validate token. So in the client IDC, you have this testing 12. So let me hit this. Once I hit this, I'm getting this. It is valid for 30 seconds only. So I'll go in the authorization part. I'll pick up bearer token, and here I will give this, and I will click on send. So now we are getting the status. It's working fine. So in this way, we can implement this Mule auth provider and these other scenario. So basically we have covered. So basically I have covered this Mule auth provider policy in 3 steps. The first one is to create a token provider application from there you will create a client, you will generate a token, and you will validate the token also. So these three endpoint is related to your token provider application. Then this step two is a testing application on which you are going to test the policy. And the third step is configuring the policy so that your this second step work fine. The first step we have configured the Mule provider config, then object store which is required to store the client ID and the token, and then we have used this two connector, create client connector and validate token connector. So create client is creating a client, and validate token is for validating the token that is generated. So once you create this application for the token provider part, question is where is the token get generated? So the token will be generated from the Mule itself. So when you deploy this application to the Cloud Hub, let me go to the Cloud Hub section here. So this is the token. If you go to the logs, so this runtime engine generate your token, and to the validation part also the object store you have used that will be configured here automatically. You don't need to configure it manually. So here we have this default persistent. So see, we have created two object store. One is for client and one is for token. So those object store credential are here. So if you click on this object store client, you can see whatever the client we have created till now. So let's say if you want to see, we have created for testing 12. If I click on this, so this is the binary value. If I click on this value metadata, okay, so it will not show you the value, or it will. Okay, I can delete the key. So whatever the client you have created, that data will be stored in the object store as we have configured the object store in our application. So similarly for the token as well, we'll get these token that got generated, and recent one was this. If you remember, what was the recent token? The token was DH. Okay, so this is the recent token that got generated. If I click on this, then again it is a binary value and it will not show us. So this value is like whatever the things are encrypted in it. So from here you can see the object store and what are the object store we have, and what are the clients we have in that particular object store. So all data you can see here. If you click on this, so client credential, so this is the client ID and client secret for this. Okay, so in this way we implement this Mule auth provider. If you have any question further, please let me know in the comment section. And if you like this video, you can share it as well. Keep sharing, keep growing. Thank you.